the mic's on. The Havre Grace Planning Commission meeting for December 11th, 2023 will now come to order. I'll call the roll. Ed Garano.
Here.
Warren Hartenstein.
Here.
Farhad Shah.
I'm here.
Chip Place.
Here.
Janice Chan.
Here.
Tammy Schnegus.
Here.
And I have invited our new alternate member, Harry Miller, to sit with us. Here. And he's going to participate. He's free to ask questions like the rest of us. It's just that he's the eighth man tonight because we've got a full attendance, and that means that he cannot vote. So when I call the rolls, I'll call everybody but him. But that's what the alternate's for, to be in a position to fill in even at a moment's notice, should we come up one short. The first case tonight is brought by Ocean Petroleum Company Incorporated, and that's for a site plan review for a proposed Wawa convenience store and gas station facility. This is located at 1001 Pulaski Highway at the corner of Lewis Lane. I assume everyone has had a chance to go through the documents that were presented on the website, on the city website that was made available to us. And Planning Department has graciously provided us full-size drawings so that we can see what we're looking at, because it's impossible to see that when you're looking at a computer screen. So this makes it easy to figure out the devil in the details, I like to say. So, having said that, I noticed on the agenda that you're asking for any comments from the general public first. We usually don't ask for that until at least a presentation's been made so that they'll know what to comment about, unless you're talking about comments about things other than this case.
Yeah, that's what that means. Eric had put that in there based on the way the city council agenda is set up, where they take general public comments before actual cases. But we can remove that and just have the public comment after each subject in the future.
Okay, maybe what I would like to do is after we hear these three cases, then I'll invite general comments from the public that have things, nothing to do with these three cases, but anything else in general.
Okay, we'll just move that to the back of the agenda from now on.
Say again?
We'll move that to the end of the agenda from now on.
At least, yeah, that'd be good. Because then the public may have more to say by then, or think of things. Okay, I'm going to start out by asking Tim for you to give us an oral presentation about this case.
Sure, sounds good. So this is for permit number 2024-0198. It is a site plan review for a proposed Wawa gas station and convenience store. So the proposed gas station and convenience store is located at 1001 Pulaski Highway. It's the southwest corner of Pulaski Highway and Lewis Lane. The total property size is 2.31 acres. There were two lots. There was the BP lot, and then there's a roadway that connects through to where the right is now, and then there's an undeveloped lot. Those were owned by the same person, but they were two separate lots. So those were recently combined in the past year or so into a total of 2.31 acres. The folks with Wawa are proposing a 5,915 square foot convenience store with 8 gas pumps. As I mentioned, it's existing BP gas station. Those structures will be demolished, and there'll be a new Wawa put up. This is Zone C for commercial. Gas stations are allowed, but as a conditional use. When we went back and did research for the original BP gas station, there was a conditional use approval for gas stations at this site, so that would continue to run at that location. And there were no specific conditions placed on the BP gas station with that conditional use. So this is the location in the light blue, just in case anybody anybody wonders. So you can see the road that bisects this, that goes into the Rite Aid now, that'll go away. But that kind of shows sort of where the two different lots were. So the one on the west, on the left part of the screen there, is the undeveloped parcel, and the part on the right is where the BP gas station is located. So we examined all the things that are required to be examined under Chapter 155 of the code, which is our site plan review ordinance. Hopefully everybody's had a chance to read that. This presentation will just sort of give a summary, and then if we have questions later, I can answer those the best as possible. The current property is served by city water and sewer. That would continue to happen. Public Works will review the plans to make sure that any improvements that need to occur will occur prior to receiving a building permit. The city does have a water model study ongoing right now that's looking at fire flows. Part of that is because of the water line that will go to Aberdeen and provide them water. So there may need to be some specific booster pumps or that sort of thing that occur along 40. So again, the city engineer and Public Works will make sure that all that's taken care of. So water and sewer are two parts of public facilities. Third one is schools. It's a commercial property, so it won't affect schools. The fourth one is traffic. I just spoke to the traffic engineer. He's here tonight. One of the requests we had was that in their traffic impact statement, they show or they discuss several improvements that they would recommend, and we asked that they provide some illustration if possible. But if not, we can maybe discuss anyway the improvements and how those would help. So in the traffic impact study, it showed that the Wawa plus growth, the 2.2% growth that's listed in our traffic impact analysis in our code, that it won't go beyond, it won't go below, it won't degrade below a level of service standard D. So if it goes below D, they have to do improvements. If not, then things can stay the way that they are. So we had spoke with the traffic engineer at the very beginning and sent draft copies of the report to the county. I think we're all on the same page on future growth, on trip distribution, on all those items that come out. So now it's just a matter of the county and state highway reviewing this just to make sure that the proposed that the level of service standard won't degrade below D, and just to see if there's any other improvements they suggest beyond what was already suggested by the applicant. So one thing that was mentioned by our Department of Public Works, a city engineer, he had suggested maybe the current access from Lewis Lane be closed, or actually in this case it would move west, but the city engineer thought that it might be a good idea to close that entrance where you see the red circle. We spoke with the county public works department about this. They review our traffic studies for us, and they said they didn't see a problem with having this open. The folks with Bowler Engineering representing the applicant and the traffic engineer are here tonight, so they can maybe go a little bit further on additional problems this would cause if this was closed, and then you could make a decision if you would want to go more with what the traffic engineers have to say or what the city engineer had suggested. In blue, there are two more ingress and egress into the space. They will close that Rite Aid entrance, if I didn't already mention that. That'll move further west, and then the connection to Rite Aid won't exist through this property, but it would exist further west on the service road that goes behind Rite Aid into Harbor Shops. And I just made a note that on the eastern entrance off of Pulaski Highway, that State Highway will have to approve that just to give them an access permit, since this will be more intense than the existing BP. They'll probably have a review that they have to do at SHA level just to make sure that this works. Concerning environmental issues for that undeveloped parcel, or the part of the parcel that's undeveloped, it was shown that is not defined as a forest. It's a small area of trees, but it's not forested. Didn't require a forest conservation plan. Our landscaping plan does require that all trees 6 inches or larger remain, and if they can't, they have to the applicant has to request to have those removed. They did make that request, and we felt that they met the criteria for having those trees removed. I'm not even sure if any of them were over 6 inches But it wasn't forested, and at the end of the day, the trees and everything that's put in by landscaping will actually create a more desired situation. There were no other environmentally sensitive issues. There's some 10% slopes, but again, it's not forested, so it's not anything we would protect. There were no tidal or non-tidal wetlands, so there weren't a lot of environmental issues. Obviously, it's a gas station. There could be issues with leaking and that sort of thing. They would require an MDE license that would cover all of those things, I think, beyond what our site plan ordinance would have. So we would just require that we're provided any kind of MDE licensing for the gas station before we issue use and occupancy. So I just wanted to reiterate to everybody. So since I've been here in 19 months, we've only had Popeyes that we reviewed. And so this is the second site plan review that we've had in my time here. So for me, at least, it's new. And I know we've had people that have come onto the planning commission after I've started as planning director. So I just wanted to reiterate what we have under chapter 155.11, which talks about planning commission review. So you have three options today. You can approve with conditions, or you can deny the application, the site plan application. The Planning Commission can impose such conditions as deemed necessary to ensure compliance with the city code. And with any conditions, must state the basis for any required improvements. You can table this matter for further discussion, but within 60 days from today's date, the Planning Commission will have to make a decision unless there's an extension by all parties. In the staff report, we have a list of requirements. They're pretty boilerplate. The reason for that is that the applicant had submitted their site plan, landscaping plan, the entire package. We had an opportunity to review that, provide them comments in-house, and they made all the revisions we requested, except for the one about closing the access on Lewis Lane, just because there was a different thought on that from their end, so we wanted to have that discussed with you. But basically, they made all the revisions that we found needed to be made under code, or they addressed them in some way. So the recommendations are pretty light in the staff report, but everything is in there. And if you have any questions, I'll be more than glad to answer what I can. As I mentioned, the folks with Buller Engineering are the engineers for the project. They are here. They brought some exhibits to help out if they need to show anything, and then also the traffic engineers here as well, who can help discuss any of the issues with closing Lewis Lane or any of the improvements that were proposed and how those could help.
Thank you very much. I'll go to the commissioners. Do you have any questions from Tim's presentation?
Will we be having a presentation from the applicant, or?
Say again?
Will we be having a presentation from the applicant?
Yeah. We just want to, while what he just said is fresh on your mind, I'm just asking if you have any questions of Tim relating to what he just presented to us.
I'll reserve my questions till after.
I just have one. What happens to the current fuel cells that are under the ground right now?
Yeah, I'm not sure. We didn't look too deep into that issue because MDE will require a license. They'll probably require environmental testing of the soils and all those sorts of things. There'll be some process to remove those if they're going to be removed. I assume they will, because I think they're in a bit of a different location, but I could be wrong. But the engineers are here tonight. They work on these projects, I assume, on a more regular basis, so they probably have a good idea of how that works and can help answer those questions.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Harry, did you have a question?
Same question.
Okay.
Yeah. I had that.
Okay.
Too.
That it? Oh, yes?
My understanding from a council perspective is that they will be replacing the tanks. So we need to just clarify if that's a true statement.
We'll have the engineer speak to that.
Okay.
Thank you.
One more question. Sure. The entrance off of Lewis Lane that you're considering, one way or the other, is this going to make this section of Lewis Lane a only turn in from there? Because there's the train tracks right over there, and that's going to cause a little bit of a bottleneck.
I would have to look. I believe it's a right in, right out, but I could be wrong on that.
Versus coming in from the...
I think it actually does show...
It appears just to be a normal intersection without
Yeah,
any
it
control.
does. So that could, yeah, I mean, so maybe that's one way to consider it, that this would be just a right in, right out versus full ingress egress.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, we will now hear from the applicant, whoever would like to represent the applicant. If you would come up to that pedestal, please, and give us your name and address.
Just so you guys know, we're being recorded live, and the only way they can hear us is through the microphone, so everybody will have to speak into the microphone, please.
Sure. So I'm Jen Bass with Bowler. We are the civil engineers on the project. I'm project manager, and then with our team we have Alex Metzler, who is with the traffic engineering team. We have Chris Hoffman, who is with Wawa, representing them, and then Michael Gazelle, who is the actual civil engineer on the project.
Okay.
So we do have a rendering that may be a little better to see or than from the screen, but as Tim had mentioned, it's a proposed 5,900 square foot Wawa C-store and then an 8 MPD fuel service canopy along the front of the site. There's 47 parking spaces provided, 30 are required per code. It's replacing, as Tim had said, an existing gas station that was on the front parcel, has a 1,000 square foot C-store kiosk, 4 MPDs, and a 650 square foot car wash in its existing conditions. The rear of the site right now is a grass pad site. So, as I said, the Wawa C-store is at the back of the site. The fuel canopy is at the front. The intent is to keep the existing access from Pulaski Highway, which is right now a right in, right out, ultimately maintaining that pretty close to its existing location, some configuration to make it a better movement there. There will be sidewalk along Pulaski Highway, and then along Lewis Lane, proposing sidewalk along the extents of the property, and then closing one access on Lewis Lane, shifting the second access back further, and then keeping the rear access to the adjacent shopping center. Landscaping meets code, as Tim had said. We had some initial comments from Tim's team. We worked with Tim, addressed them. We do have 8 trees that were existing over 6 inches in caliper, and per city code, we need to mitigate for those being and replace them. Those trees are currently in the grass strip that is behind the existing gas station, so in front of that existing access into the Rite Aid area. And as you can see, with the consolidation of the lots, it would not be conducive to keep those trees in their existing conditions. We have proposed to mitigate for them. As I said, it was 8 trees being removed. We are replacing with 9 trees of 3-inch caliper. Stormwater management on the site will be addressed quality and quantity both. Quality will be through 2 microbiome facilities and then 2 storm filters. So this area along the front of the site is where the microbiomes will be, and then 2 underground storm filters. One is potentially or in this area, and then back here at the rear of the site. And then we do have to also meet quantity management requirements, and so there'll be an underground detention facility that is in this drive aisle area. Utilities, as Tim mentioned, the intent is to connect into the existing public water and sewer. We're waiting for the results from Tim for the water model report, and then we will work with DPW accordingly to make sure that we are addressing any concerns there. And I'll take a moment, Alex, if you want to talk a little on the traffic side and what the off-site improvements are before we get into some of the architectural related items. Okay. Your exhibit.
All right, sir, if you would also give us your name and address for the record.
Good evening, Alex Meitzler with Traffic Planning and Design, 131 Continental Drive, Suite 103, Newark, Delaware. Okay. Evening, we prepared the traffic impact study for for the sorry, brain's going faster than my mouth. For the subject development, as Tim had mentioned, we had quite a bit of discussion, not only with the city, but also with the county and state highway as far as committed developments, growth, trip distributions, various things that we felt we counted cars twice to make sure that we captured everything about school. School being in, knowing that the school campus is right across the street. So to summarize what we are looking to do as far as improvements, as Jennifer mentioned, we are going to close one of the driveways to Lewis Lane. So we'll talk about access into the site first. We'll work from Route 40 back. Route 40 right now, the approach to Route 40 right now has a through left lane and a dedicated right turn lane. Operationally, it will work better to have a dedicated left turn lane and a through right. And so we are proposing to change not only the lane configuration, but the phasing in of the signal. Right now, it's a split, what's called a split phase, where each side of Route 40 goes independently. We need to get this verified by SHA, but we feel that we could run concurrent left turns, given that we're going to change, and we're actually going to do the same lane configuration on the other side. So that way, we could run concurrent left turns, which eliminates the number of reduces the number of phases of the signal and allows more time for traffic to operate more efficiently. Moving back, we are going to, given that we know there's going to be proposed development on this parcel as well, we are going to maintain the middle as a center left turn lane, which will allow left turns into the driveway across from the Weiss driveway, as well as the, let's see, where am I here? There we go. Sorry. As well as the existing driveway, I'll call it the service driveway that goes to the back. In regards to keeping this open, for the Wawa and the way that these stores attract, having this driveway actually further away, because this will be the larger generator of the two driveways, further away from the railroad tracks is preferred as people slow down, people wanting to turn in. You don't want to do anything to encourage a potential queue closer to the railroad track. And while these are, it may feel like these are going to be close, this is going to be more of a minor driveway as far as trip generation, but it also allows, since we are removing the connectivity to the Rite Aid site, it still maintains the connectivity along that commercial corridor, which is not only good for the businesses, but however, for emergency access, it allows ways for police, fire, EMS. It's another way for them to get in and out should something be happening along the Route 40 frontage. So it does provide another means of access and egress to all those parcels that are serviced by it. Again, center left turn lane down until the left turn lane for 40 is developed, and as I said earlier, on the other side, this same lane configuration will be on the westbound approach of Lewis Lane as well. That's another, would be I'll call that an off-site.
Should we get into traffic now, or should we?
There are some additional, on the Route 40.
Okay.
On that as well itself, if you'd like to hear those.
Please.
We can get into traffic.
Please. I didn't want to interrupt you, but.
No, that's okay. These are really fairly, very quite minor. And again, the study's in with review with SHA at the moment, but according to our analysis, with everything put in there, on eastbound and westbound Route 40, the left turn lanes in both directions theoretically are about 50 feet short once you put all the growth and development and everything on there. So we might need to have to do some very minor striping or very minor road work in order to extend those back.
Excuse me, does everybody understand what we're looking at here?
We kind of do.
Maybe we need to explain that a little better.
Sorry.
I'm trying to get oriented. I assume both of those fit end to end?
So if you're on Route 40 coming in either direction, there's a left turn lane.
Well, what's that right in, right out right there? What does that go to? Is that in front of the Rite Aid? Right there.
What this tag?
That is in front of the Rite Aid, but this is ultimately, as you're seeing, the turn lane is going to be extended, so you can see
So you're heading Jennifer.
Okay, so you're approaching the light.
You're approaching Lewis Lane.
Okay, okay.
And so this left turn lane would be extended further back, so that
Okay.
cars can queue in that left turn lane.
And this one, I'm sorry,
And then what are we seeing there?
this one is you're coming off the bridge. You're coming,
So it's in the opposite direction.
it's in the opposite direction, you're going southbound.
So it's
So
the
Lewis
Weiss driveway.
Lane,
So now we're on the other side of the highway.
Exactly, so it's
Okay,
both
got it.
left turn lanes.
both left turn lanes on 40
I get it.
I see.
are, in theory, are about 50
Right,
feet.
you're just looking at it from two opposite directions.
Two opposites, same improvement on.
So that's the one that goes into Weiss.
Yeah, so I was sitting there trying to connect them this way, and it wasn't making sense. Yeah. Okay, thank you. Uh-huh.
We can pause there for any traffic questions.
Okay, are you moving to some, another topic as soon as you finish here with traffic?
So I was
Or do
going
you-
to discuss the architecturals.
Okay,
And
yeah.
then,
So let's-
quickly
while
touch
we're
on
traffic,
signage.
then let's, I think traffic is something that's gonna be, pretty important to us. So, comments? You wanna start, Chip?
Sure, I have some comments. Actually, I would support your proposed driveway across from the Weiss entrance. I think it just makes a lot of sense. And I think it makes sense to provide alternate connections between retail on a busy highway like 40. You don't want to have to go out to 40 to go just next door. It's great to have that option. I would have even questioned why the dumpsters are where they are and why you couldn't maintain that access all the way through to Rite Aid. But as long as you have the service entrance, I think that's adequate, and you have a access directly from Wawa out to the service entrance, which allows you to get back to that other shopping center. I think that would be adequate, but I would certainly support that. Now, when you talk about the turning lane, I'm thinking of on Lewis Lane in particular. I think you mentioned a center turn lane. Would you be changing the width of the asphalt there at all? So you would be maintaining the curb lines?
Be maintaining the curb lines, but changing how space is utilized.
Okay.
But the curb to curb would still be the same. Now, obviously, along Wawa frontage, that whole frontage pretty much is going to be moving the entrance. That whole frontage is being rebuilt.
It'll be improvements, new curb along there and sidewalk. But
Okay.
ultimately, we're not widening the road.
Ultimately, the road will not be wide.
Okay. And just a more general comment too is that, as a planning commissioner, we were actually in the middle of our comprehensive plan update, and we talked about transportation last week, and you all kind of discounted bike lanes and bike access along Lewis Lane, and we're about to enter a specific study that seems to focus on Lewis Lane, although there's other crossings of Route 40 that are also very important. So I think it's very important to think ahead, and especially with this application, how the right-of-way would accommodate bike lanes going forward too. And it certainly, I don't think it would work within the existing curb line. So it would, and I can save some of my comments for later on that, but, just in the layout of this scheme, I think it's important to think about bike lanes going forward and how that would work off the existing curb line onto.
If I can add, if you're aware that the Baltimore Metropolitan Council is doing a
Yes.
bicycle study along Route 40 right now.
Exactly, yes.
And there are some very preliminary, I'll call them, 30,000-foot ideas and concepts for various parts of Route 40. We have along the Route 40 frontage left room
That's great.
to accommodate, because since we don't know exactly what that is going to be, we have left room along the Route 40 frontage in order to accommodate that. In regards to the Lewis Lane, it is much more constrained as far as available right-of-way.
Right.
In order to just make the two approach lanes and these turns, as far as putting a bike lane on there. However, we are at the moment, we are putting sidewalk along Lewis Lane.
Right.
And providing another method of kind of non-vehicular connectivity where there currently is not.
Well, it looks like there's a good 15, 17, 18 feet from the curb line to the right-of-way line on Lewis Lane adjoining your property. So, so that's, when we think about planting street trees, and you all will be planting those street trees, right? Okay. That's not counted as the 9 you mentioned previously.
No, they are.
Those are in addition to the 9.
In this area.
Okay, all right. So just when locating street trees, and one thing that stood out to me too is the crooked sidewalk to go around the telephone pole. What would be really great would be if you all buried those electric lines along Lewis Lane, because they're in the way, and they're going to be in the way, and they just interfere with the appearance of your property too. So that's something you all might consider. And then the last thing about traffic from me is along 40, it's great that you're including a sidewalk there. At your entry median there, it wasn't clear whether you're providing a refuge for pedestrians as they cross, the entry and the exit. And if you could, within that median, if you could provide a clear pedestrian refuge there as people try to walk through there. That makes sense.
As Tim mentioned, that is going to be required. We have to go through Maryland State Highway.
Right.
To make that a compliant, to make it a compliant driveway.
Okay.
Which that would also be we haven't gotten quite to those, that level of detail yet, but that's always a consideration for crossing and providing the pedestrian refuge in the pork chop.
Right. Okay. Well, I'll have other questions on other matters, but that's it for traffic for me.
I just have one. When you're coming into Lewis Lane off of 40,
Which
and
direction, or just in general?
just turning on to go into the Wawa at the entrance off of the Lewis Lane, is that going to be a turn lane to get in there? Is there a separate turn lane? Is that what you're saying?
It's going to be, here, maybe,
I want to make sure. Okay,
what we are proposing,
this is Lewis Lane.
this is Lewis Lane, here's the site.
Okay,
So as
This
you
is coming in.
come in, the left turn lane is going for 40 is going to start about here.
okay,
And this is going to be a center left turn lane. So this is going to be a left turn lane that people can turn left this way or that way. But it's, let's see, the hatch starts right about here. So this is where the left turn lane will be.
so there'll be a separate lane for them to get into the
There will
Wawa
be-
right there?
So the through lane will stay here.
Okay.
And if you're coming this direction.
Yep.
And traffic would drop in here.
That's what I'm wondering.
To turn left.
Because once that train comes across,
Oh, right, you don't want people.
it's
yeah,
backed all the way up to the
Right.
40.
Right.
Okay, okay. Thank you very much.
I have a couple questions. All right, So I'm looking at this and, you know, as a person who drives on the street a lot, I can tell you that there's like on the other side of the street, there's 4,000 trips per day. I guarantee over 2,000 of them come right through here, okay? And most of the people are going straight. I think you want a dedicated left lane because you're attracting people that are be going on and up through Cecil County. So that's why you want to do a left lane. But I was wondering, you know, if there was a possibility to even still have a right turn lane also. And, you know, I know that kind of interferes with the stormwater and stuff like that, but what's happening is not very many people are coming out of this subdivision and the subdivisions above from Bully Rock and turning left. And I think more turn right than turn left, but a majority of them are going straight. Okay, so even people that are
I'm sorry, going straight on Lewis Lane or going straight on?
straight on Lewis Lane to cross to go over to the school property where there's over 4,000 trips average per day. So that should just be something to look at. I was looking at this truck turning plan, truck turn exhibit. I guess no trucks are going to come from the north. They're all just coming from the south and going around, because if they're coming from the north, these trucks are going to be coming up here and trying to get in this at the Lewis Lane entrance, okay? So that's important to think about, because I've also, I agree with you about the queuing lanes on the left-hand turn lanes off of Florida are short, and there are signal failures there all the time. I don't know, I apologize, I didn't get in the traffic study report too heavy, but there are signal failures there on both left-hand lanes at sometimes. And then this is a jacked up section of road, because you know, I'm sure you were there when the trains were coming through and people were backed up onto 40 trying to turn right onto Lewis Lane. You had to have seen that. And so an establishment like this, great establishment, by the way, I'm not anti-Wawa or nothing. This is some issues here with that, of course. Maybe at certain times of the day, and maybe by the traffic study or something, that it's acceptable to have failures at 3 o'clock, as long as over the 24-hour span it's not. But there's going to be times where this is going to be a mess. People can't get out of, when the train's there, people won't be able to get out. Either, you know,
They won't be able to
turn left.
turn left.
Exactly. I also see a small issue with when you do have trash pickup, because Chip mentioned about the trash placement. Even if they're coming straight in and pulling, they're going to block your back lane there, you know, while they're doing it, multiple pulls or something. So just something to look at there. I think I'll leave it at that. I'm sorry. First night back and just talking away. I'm sorry.
I don't know if I should jump in now or just, anybody else got anything you want to throw in? But that doesn't mean you can't after I say my little piece. I am, of this whole proposal, of this whole project, the only thing that I am deeply, deeply, deeply concerned about is traffic. And not just traffic in general, but this particular situation. We've got a fairly difficult situation as everything exists right now, and that BP station is not generating that much traffic. It's not doing that much business. It's not doing anywhere near the business that the Wawa is going to do, hopefully. And secondly, the Harbor Shops retail center, there's land beyond that, beyond the APG, Proving Ground Credit Union. There's land there that's just itching to be developed. And anybody that goes shopping anywhere, the first thing they want to do is get quickly back to a traffic light so that they can break out into the main drag and not have to turn right and go down the road towards Aberdeen, then turn around and do a U-turn and those things. I know the State Highway Administration is very stingy about providing new crossovers. They're extremely stingy, ridiculously so. and it's caused us problems. Today, it causes us problems in the lower part of Route 40, going towards the bridge. Excuse me. So we've got another project that's coming right across the intersection from you on the same side of Route 40 in that vacant land. That's going to be another project that we expect to land on the doorstep very quickly. As far as trains are concerned, those CSX trains are many times are hitting 200-car trains. I mean, that's extremely long. That's over 2 miles long, and they're not moving terribly fast when they come through here because usually they're coming off a signal over in Perryville. It takes a while to get up speed, and those trains are so long that often they run units in the middle of the train, locomotives, and I've seen them on the rear, which is called distributed power. And what that translates to at this intersection, at this site, is long delays waiting to get across those tracks. And the stack-ups are amazing, but what's worse is when the train just leaves, and all of a sudden all those cars are trying to move at one time. I've been caught in the middle of it countless times. I use the residential part of Lewis Lane as a cut-through to get to my house up in the Heights, because I don't want to fool with the long lights at Route 40. I want to just get home. And everybody else has got the same idea. So that particular subdivision route was very poorly planned some years ago. It, in my view, it should have been a regular street and not this narrow little thing squinched in between townhouses. That street is grossly overutilized. And so everybody up in the Heights, all the way up at Grace Harbor, Bayview Estates, if they want to get down into these stores and get home without a lot of hassle, that's the way they go. So the next thing is the railroad grade is so high that you can't see cars popping up over the tracks when they're coming from the residential side. Unless you're in an SUV or something, and I have an SUV, I can see the roofs coming. But most people that sit low in the car, they never know a car is coming at them fast until that car suddenly just pops over the tracks and boom, there he is. And it's right at that intersection. And that's nothing that you or we can do anything about, but it's something we have to take into account. As far as the grocery store is concerned, that little back service driveway is way more than a service driveway. It is also the easy way to get to the grocery store and get home if you're living up on the hill, and it's used all the time.
Are you talking about the Weiss Market?
Yeah, yep, and
When I said service driveway, I was referring
Yeah.
to. Yeah, I was referring to this.
okay, that's not a service driveway either, even though it's supposed to be.
That's what I was referring to.
That's the only way people get out of the harbor shops when they want to get out of there and get to the light. That's the way they come. And the Rite Aid knows that, and that's why they put all those signs up saying you can't go through here. This is us. This is our property. Stay out of here. I'm not sure they own it, but I mean that's what they do. And so everybody has to thread their way back along that back driveway next to the tracks and come out up there, and it's a pretty steady line of people coming and going through there. The interesting characteristics about all of these shops on both sides of Route 40 is it's easy to get into them, but it's hard to get out of them. I mean, really, it's so easy to write in, write out, and all that, but the write outs are always going in the wrong direction. And of course, everybody uses the right ends. They don't try to come back through here. So getting into these places is not a problem, and it never will be. It's getting out. Now, I examined this streetscape along Lewis Lane today very carefully, and the biggest restriction that you've got there is that line of high voltage BGE poles going right down through there. And I know that's impacting some decisions because it's expensive to move those things. Lewis Lane needs another lane. You got it set up with 3 lanes, counting both directions. It needs to be 4 lanes. That road needs to be widened. And because we got too much stuff coming in the future that's going to increase that traffic demand like crazy along that road. We even have tractor trailers that are delivering to Wise Market have to come straight up that road to get into the place. They don't. That's the only way they are allowed to enter that place, because that's where they go to their loading docks. And all the tractor trailers that service harbor shops have to come in that way and service from the rear of those stores. There's just a huge amount of activity on that road, a huge amount, and we've got to plan for it. We've got to take that into account. Like somebody, I forgot who mentioned that it would be nice if we had 3 lanes going out and 1 lane coming in. I don't see a need for a second lane coming in. However, as we get halfway down Lewis Lane, I see the need for that lane to split into 2 lanes. So in other words, you would have, coming over the tracks, you would have 2 lanes going all the way down from the railroad down to the traffic light, with a 3rd lane beside it, so that that 3rd lane, which would be the middle lane, would be handling traffic. The back half of it would handle traffic turning one way, and the front half would handle traffic turning the other way. Until we get another lane, it's going to be tough to make this thing work. It's going to be really tough to make it work. Particularly with the anticipated growth that we're going to see.
Is there room on the lot across Lewis Lane? Where is the property line and where is the right of way?
Well, here are the property lines. You can see them right here.
Looks like there's space there to me, but
Well, there's space on both sides. There's a ton of space on both sides. I mean, the right of way is wide. It's really wide through there. It's just that I think the developers in this project are trying to keep the existing curb and not have to widen the street. I mean, the minute you get into street widening,
The other thing about the street widening is
State highways.
having the railroad there, how do you efficiently and safely
taper down.
taper out and taper down, and that requires a certain amount of length and run.
Well, that's to me it's easy. But it's you when you take those 4 lanes and when you get up to the railroad tracks, those 4 lanes don't exist anymore. They've already been used up as a turnoff. And by the time you get to the railroad, you're clean. You're 2 lanes, and there's no need for 2 lanes any more than 2 lanes to cross those tracks.
Except for a bike lane. 2 lanes to go across.
Well, bike lanes.
Yeah, with bike
But I mean
or
the bike.
shoulder.
I would think that if we can take this right away and use it properly, it would be easy to come up with enough extra room for the bike lane.
Mm-hmm.
So one thing just to keep in mind, our analysis showed right now, but as far as the through and the left turn traffic, again, by better utilizing these
Mm-hmm.
signal and the through signal for more efficient, with stacking coming this way, going away from Route 40, with the railroad, that's part of the control. I mean, that's not necessarily.
Well, the idea.
But coming this direction,
Mm-hmm.
By making these changes here, you get about you more efficiently use this lane by allowing more throughput signal and still allowing your left turns in. You would still really coming this direction, a second through lane you still then need left turn lanes to get into the white, you still need the ability to turn left.
Mm-hmm.
So adding another through lane, you basically would have to add another 2 lanes.
Well, what I would envision is as soon as you get across those tracks coming towards Route 40, that you would immediately fan out into 3 lanes. And then as you get...
Which is what you, but you have 3 lanes here. You do have 3 lanes here.
Mhm.
You have 2
What?
through lanes and a center left turn.
Yeah, I'm saying that. I mean, you have that now. There's no question. The problem is all this stacking, and the problem is fighting the person coming head on at you for a left turn when they're trying to go straight or they're trying to make a right turn. And so you got to come to a stop and figure out what they're doing, because your oncoming meets are it's such a short distance.
And playing devil's advocate, then everybody turning left is now having to cross 2 lanes,
So, just going along with what Volney's saying, I believe that this store will generate the need for that left turn lane, okay, that you have to get onto 40. Because, just my opinion, of course, right now, like I said, most people are going straight, and so anybody that's currently coming down that road, are going straight or turning right.
When you're saying left turn, I don't mean to interrupt you, but we are, by taking the through out of that left turn lane,
I gotcha,
that you now have an exclusive left turn lane.
I gotcha,
More fully utilized.
right.
And you're not having through and left turn traffic. That way, if some guy's turning left, all the through traffic's not backing up behind them. And acknowledging that is the more major move, that allows the through to move.
So what I'm saying is the store is generating the need for that left turn lane, because I don't think it currently exists. And then what you'll see is, I believe, is that with the large number of vehicles at certain times of the day, they're going to block your entrance. And, all the way back, they can't stop on the tracks. I can see it, a line of cars a couple times during the day that'll become prevalent, where it'll be difficult for people to turn left in your place because just the stacking, waiting for that light, because the right-hand turn people can't go now. They're waiting for the light, and there's somebody going straight in front of them. Does that make sense? And look, I don't envy this situation. I mean, you're trying to do something here. I get it, but I'm with Volney here. I think it needs to be wider and possibly some other type of relief outlet there.
Well, I don't see a proper solution other than a dedicated right turn lane, a dedicated through lane, and a dedicated left turn lane. I like the idea of left turns, lights going on both sides of the highway at the same time. I think that's way smarter than letting one side go first and then the other side, because I absolutely know for a fact that the amount of traffic that's trying to come from one direction is greater than the amount of traffic trying to come from the other direction. I think that we're trying to figure out the best way to handle this thing without creating another lane and without moving those poles, because I know that's expensive, and that's to me that's the sticky wicket is that line of poles, and that's what's keeping this thing from being able to be much more fluid. Once you have enough space for 4 lanes and a bike lane, I think that there's going to be all kinds of creative ways of making this whole thing work better. And it's just a matter of sitting down and doing it. And the other thing that getting off that subject, because I think I've ridden that horse far enough. Who actually owns the exit road, if you will, that parallels CSX, all the way in the back? Who owns that?
That is within the Wawa property.
It is in the Wawa? So you're saying that Wawa touches railroad?
Oh, so between the access drive?
This would be
This guy had written.
the current road that does need, huh?
This drive here at the
Yeah.
rear? Yes, that is within the Wawa property. You can see the property line.
Oh, I got it. Okay, all the way up here. Yeah,
Yes.
yeah, got it. Okay.
While we're on the topic of property, the street that's across from the current British Petroleum, is it, who owns that land, that plat of land behind the Wawa, the Wise gas station?
That's SEL Properties Incorporated. And that's what I mentioned earlier. I think that we're going to see a project coming in front of us pretty soon on that one. So that road back there, that's part of the Wawa property, is in extremely rough shape. I assume that the plan is to completely dig that thing up and rebuild it and make it wider and everything else. Is that the plan?
So right now, we are keeping the road in the current design,
Same width, you mean?
same width,
It's outside their LOD.
outside our LOD.
Okay, now all of Harbor Shops have the right to just sail through there?
Technically, well, the Rite Aid will need the access through, but there need to be easements put together, and those will need to be, executed by the owners for access.
So Harbor Shops does not have an easement through there currently?
Right now, there is an access easement
There is.
along the back, yes.
Perpetual?
Right now, it's a private ingress, egress, and drainage and utility easement along that entire rear. And there's also, at the rear of the property, an AT&T easement, which hinders what can be done in that rear area because there's underground fiber lines that can't be cut over. We have to make sure that we maintain the correct coverage over them.
So Rite Aid's will continue to have an easement through your property?
Correct.
Where are they cutting through?
Rite Aid will come through the rear.
All the way at the rear by the railroad tracks?
Correct, yes.
Okay. Well, they're connected wide open to the rest of that entire shopping center. I mean, how are you gonna, it's very important to know what's gonna happen there.
Sure, I would anticipate that there will be traffic through there for the rest of the shopping center.
Okay, and there's nothing that Wawa can do or is planning to do to stop that. Is that correct? Or you don't know?
And do,
Close it off.
there could be, it could be closed off, which would hinder Rite Aid access. Ultimately, you
Yeah.
could put up signage. However,
How do you enforce
what an individual is going to do, and, if they're going to trespass past signage.
Okay. This is, it's getting more and more interesting here.
So it could be that 5 years down the road, Wawa would like to take that property and close that off.
So right now that there is that access easement, and so in order to close that off, there would need to be, you would need to extinguish that easement. And
But-
so you need to, per that easement, you need to be able to provide that access to the adjacent property.
Okay, so let me clarify again. So that access easement that you're aware of is more than just Rite Aid. It's the entire,
We would have to dive into the specifics of
Yeah.
who is listed in the easement.
okay. Because that question has a really major impact on traffic, coming in the future as to what becomes of all that. And I know that road back there is in horrible shape. It's, it's just all over the place. It's sunken down into the ground. It's this and that. It's just not suitable for major traffic. It's in much worse shape than just a plain old subdivision street.
And we can review that and
Yeah,
look to.
I mean, it's just
Address.
wibble wobble and all over.
Correct. And one thing, and, without digging into this easement and knowing the, the specifics of everyone that has access through that,
Yeah.
and if you're concerned that there's going to be traffic that's going to continue past the rite aid, I know that, it's open through there. If the traffic were to be
Yeah.
limited to just the Wawa and the Rite Aid, then there would need to be improvements done on the Rite Aid property, if they were to redevelop or if the property adjacent
Yeah.
to them redevelops to limit that access.
It's as busy as a city street right now. Simple as that. And it's not terribly wide, so cars have to kind of scooch by each other. It's built to a very, very poor standard. And I'm sure that was because it was private property and just considered at the time just to be a service driveway. So they didn't really care at the time.
Also, this plan cuts off the more southern road that goes through here now, right?
Oh, you mean the other
Yeah.
road?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, this
Yeah,
is just the back.
they've eliminated that, so the
So you
Rite
can't,
Aid traffic has got to come along the back roads. We call that the back road.
the rest of the shopping center.
Currently, there's a back road and a center road. You can look at the other plan here, the existing plan. You can see it all on there.
I think to make a judgment on this without knowing what's going to occur on the other side of Lewis Lane would be folly, because there could lie the additional space or the width that we need on Lewis Lane.
Well, I think we're maybe misinterpreting this site plan here. If you look at the property line for lands of SEL properties, that's that corner site that has not been developed yet. And you look at the curb line of Lewis Lane, they're very close to each other. So you really can't widen Lewis Lane hardly at all in that direction. See, this,
This line here is
that's the curb, and that's the property line.
okay.
All right? This is the lane coming towards the railroad track.
Okay.
And then here are the two lanes going towards the traffic light. And the area that can be significantly widened is from here all the way to here. It's on
Okay.
the Wawa side
I
of
see
Lewis
that,
Lane, where all the real estate is.
So just to help the board, just to know what went into our analysis. Before we put any car from anything else, we did use a annual background growth of 2.2% per year out to our build years, in addition to including 9 other proposed nearby developments, which we know are either in process, that are in the approval process, including a sketch for the proposed development directly across the street. So, to the greatest extent possible, we have tried to account for growth and things that are happening that are already committed, and committed and approved or in process, either through the city or through the county. That would impact, that would impact our analysis.
If I can just build on that a little bit, what I had mentioned earlier, their studies and all of this, but including the traffic study, was given to us prior. So we had given this to the county who does our traffic impact statement reviews, and we verified the background growth internally and through the county, their methodology for the study, their traffic counts, trip distributions, all those things were verified. So I'm not to disqualify any of the recommendations any of you are making, but I can say that the methodology in the study was vetted, was reviewed, and this were the results from something that went through a couple looks. This wasn't anything new that was sort of presented to us. This has sort of been cycled through a couple times. So we don't have the final comments from the county or SHA yet, but at least the methodology you see in the report was vetted by the county.
Vetted by the county, you say?
Yeah, I mean, we don't,
And it's a fair amount of back and forth
yeah,
to make sure, knowing that this is a pinch point.
yeah, we,
We wanted to make sure that everyone was comfortable, that we were accounting for what is happening around here, and that the report was including that and accounting for it, and, things going on, not just our development.
Hey, Tim, do we know what the AADT is on that section between the tracks and 40?
what you mean what the traffic counts are?
Yeah.
They should be in this report, or they do them at intersections, so you'd have the information at the intersection, I guess you couldn't.
I have the peak hour. We did not, I do not believe we did.
So
it
we don't
today.
have an average daily, okay. That's all I was asking, because I know we look at intersections, but the deal is that none of those people from Bully Rock and stuff are supposed to be coming down through there anyhow, because the intersections we looked at, they're supposed to go out Bully Rock Parkway and down 155, but they're not. They're coming down Lewis Lane. It's just a fact, so, no offense to anybody who lives in Bully Rock.
I have respect for the methodology of your traffic studies, and I know that they're, those studies are real, and they are, have been practiced for a long time, and they found for almost every case to be valid. However, this is so weird, this location, and I'm also, as the old saying goes, I'm trusting my lying eyes when I see what's going on, because I experience it. I'm there.
And please don't take any of my
Yeah.
back and forth. One thing I would like to just ask for consideration as we continue to discuss here. Many projects that we do, even on the public sector, we are not making streets wider these days. We are, if anything, trying to make them a little narrow, make them narrow, but trying to make more traffic calming. I can tell you as a cyclist, if I was to add a lane on Lewis Lane, I'd rather put a bike lane in than another through lane, because as a cyclist, I don't like to ride on a 4-lane road. Don't like it. It's not nearly as comfortable. From a traffic operations standpoint, you add another through lane in each direction, then if all left turns are crossing 2 lanes of traffic versus 1. And studies have also shown that you make a road wider, speeds increase. People feel they have more space, it's more open.
I wasn't proposing making a lane wider, it was just making
No,
the
but
road.
I meant
yeah.
adding another lane.
Yeah.
A 4-lane, say 2 through lanes in each direction with, that's what I mean, not, right, we would still, even another 10-foot lane is still another travel lane on there. So I just offer that that there's a lot of competing needs, and I think whatever shakes out, try to limit any unintended consequences. That it is a balance between making this more friendly and safe and still trying to manage the traffic, given given the physical constraints there and the operational constraint, which really none of us have much control over, of the railroad. That is that's a big operational variable that is beyond.
See, the other thing
If you know how to tell CSX how to do things, please tell me, because it would make some of my other projects a lot
that's out of the
easier.
question. Are you in any position to say anything about the project across the street from the Wawa, the upcoming project? Huh? No?
There has been we received a traffic study. There's not been an official application put in, but we've received a traffic study for that project across the street. That's under review by the county. Is it a
confidential project at this moment?
There hasn't been anything submitted for site plan application at this time.
Okay, but you can't even say what it's going to be.
It's a proposed car wash.
Okay, there you go. That's what I was trying to get you to say. Because that site is much shorter, because it's limited by the service driveway to Wise Market, it doesn't run nearly as deep as this property. It's going to have its own outlet out onto Lewis Lane.
Yeah, I don't know. I haven't seen, we haven't received an official site plan yet. So there is a traffic study that's also being reviewed by the county or anything, but because we haven't received a site plan application or anything yet, we haven't dug into it at all to see what they're going to do.
I mean, SHA is not going to let them just come out onto 40 and not come out onto Lewis Lane
Yeah, I mean, at this point, it's being
because
proposed
it's
as
too
a car
close to
wash.
the intersection.
Yeah, it's being, I mean, the traffic study shows it being proposed as a car wash, but for some reason, if that didn't work based on the traffic count or whatever else,
Yeah.
it could become something else. So like, we just haven't dove that deep into it yet because we haven't received an official application for site plan review.
Yeah, it's that's just going to be not only one more. I think it's much of the traffic load that's being added to Lewis Lane. I'm thinking more of them trying to break into the Lewis Lane traffic flow that much closer to the traffic light.
Which
And
is
you
one
all are
reason
doing a good
trying
job of trying to
account for
get
that,
your
knowing that
entrance.
someone was going to do something on that site. That's
Yeah.
why we went to the center left turn
Right.
lane concept.
It
So
does-
to allow the eastbound lefts into, or allow some access into that site for whatever it may be.
Well, I don't know how the rest of the commissioners feel, and everybody's going to have a different opinion perhaps. But for me, I would absolutely like to see a sincere effort to add another lane and develop the best possible scenario using 4 lanes. And once we see that, then if it doesn't make sense, we go back to 3. But I think we need to look at how we can make 4 lanes work better, I should
May I
say.
ask a question of the board? Is that review that you're requesting for a travel lane? Or addition of bike lanes?
A combination of things. Now, there are 2 or 3 ways we could do this. Yes.
I just have a couple things to add. Just to back up a little bit, that property across the way, the proposed car wash, it does have that one driveway that's right next to the Wise entrance driveway, so that's a possible,
There's a curb cut there now.
yes, the curb cut is right there, so,
You mean onto 40?
no,
onto
onto
Lewis Lane.
Lewis Lane.
Right.
Yeah. So that is there. And currently, right now, we have the situation where when you're heading, I guess it would be eastbound on Lewis, you cannot turn right. You have to get in one lane, and everybody either goes straight across or goes left. So modifying the direction of that, I believe, would help the traffic flow. But I think personally, in that area, bicycle lanes would be very unsafe because it's, the downward slope and the oncoming traffic and I just think it wouldn't be a wise place for bike lanes. I mean, the Route 40 and turning it into it, but that particular section, just having, a walking sidewalk would be a lot easier for folks to navigate instead of having bike lanes for recreational use.
Well, it's people with bike, there'd be kids going to school, there'd be many opportunities. Mr. Chairman, I would tend to agree with Mr. Missler. I think they've done the traffic study they need to do. And I don't see any, and we'll see that there'll be a level of service maintained at D, which is acceptable. I don't see any justification for us sitting here to say that Lewis Lane for that short stretch should be 4 lanes. I think, 2 lanes through with a turning lane should be adequate. I would just go back to a comment I made earlier, to making allowances for potential further expansion, if that's what's required, whether it's bike lanes or another turning lane, that we do what we can within this application to preserve that right-of-way on the Wawa side. And that means locating street trees out of the way, So, and I'm sure Eric can figure that out. But it would also mean burying the electric lines. Do it now. And ask this applicant, make that a condition of this approval to bury the electric lines. And that will create a blank slate for, you know, any future right-of-way that we might want to do. And by the way, there's other questions, you know, that we might want to, there's a bunch of other considerations here besides the traffic, but that would be my suggestion on how to handle the traffic issue.
Well, the electric lines can either be buried or the poles can just be simply moved over. The poles are way towards the middle of that right of way. I mean, the pole line is nowhere near the edge of the city property.
Well, the more we can bury electric lines in this town, the better, anyway.
Well, and I realize that. It's very expensive.
Well, it's an expensive project.
Okay. What else
I do hear that request and that, you know, recommendation. That all has to come into coordination with BG as well.
Sure, absolutely. Not easy. I appreciate that. Yeah, that's true.
Shall we leave the traffic discussion and move to the rest of your?
Yeah, can still be your.
So moving on to architecturals, these were included, or these were sent, I think after the initial package came out, but Tim did upload them. So I think that you guys all do have this architectural elevation here. Ultimately, there was one comment from Tim, I think two comments on this. One was to remove the EFS reference to just Stetco, which has been shown on there. And then the other comment from Tim's team was in regards to the composite wood siding and making the request of the Planning Commission to see if this was an appropriate finished facade, which would need to be, you know, presented to you for your recommendation and approval. So I did want to make sure to put that request, you know, on the record.
Can you bring it a little bit closer? So this is the updated.
Does all the signage comply with our size of our signage?
Yeah, I believe all the signage does comply. I mean, they'll have to apply for sign permits separately from this. So the Planning Commission isn't necessarily approving of any signs today. We would still need to see the technical aspects of those and make sure that they meet the requirements of our signage ordinance.
So yeah, for signage, the signage that's shown here, the building signage, and then you can see the canopy signage and the signage that goes under on this one. These are permitted. The freestanding sign is still being finalized in what would be requested. We do understand that if it is, you know, does not meet the code requirements, which of the new signage code, that we would need to go in front of Board of Appeals, that as a variance.
And how high is your sign that's going to have the prices of the gas? How high is this?
So right now, that sign is proposed as a pylon sign, which would be higher, and it ranges 20 to 25 feet in what the height is. Again, understanding that that's above what's permitted by code, so we would need to go in front of Board of Appeals. But understandably, with gas stations, fuel service stations, you know, if you have monument signs, like visibility, you don't want people slowing down at the last minute based on not being able to see the sign adequately from the road.
Well, that's your point of view as a person who's having a gas station, but as people who live here, we kind of want the lower sign. So yeah, I get what you're saying. It does make sense what you're saying, but also we do want the aesthetic of having a nice town. Sure. You know, so.
Understood. And all of the, you know, freestanding signage that would be proposed would match with the building facade, would have, you know, kind of the same
Stack brick.
base and, you know, stone as to match with the canopy.
And where would that sign be located? Because it wasn't on your drawings.
The freestanding sign is,
proposed Route 40 sign?
Ah,
Right at your entrance. Yeah. Well, in Havre Grease, we don't attempt to exercise architectural control over any building.
oh, yeah, we do.
And signage is very much a part of our ordinances, but we don't, in all my years on the planning commission, we've never even tried to consider controlling the architecture of a building, as long as it meets the building code. And so I'm assuming we're continuing that.
I would disagree, Mr. Chairman, with all due respect, as an architect myself, and because the architectural plans, and you went to great effort. By the way, your whole application was very complete, and I appreciate that, much more complete than we often see here. But I did have some questions. With your facade 4, is that the one facing Lewis Lane? And this looks like a kind of a generic architectural presentation, a generic Wawa. Is this specific to this site?
Is there another one already built somewhere?
There are others.
This is a brand new building. And I can introduce myself if you'd like. Yeah. Hi, my name is Chris Hoffman. I'm with Wawa. Address is 260 West Baltimore Pike, Wawa, Pennsylvania. And so I was just pointing out that, yeah, so what we're showing here is, we call this our U59 building. At this time, we only have one open. It's in Richmond, Virginia. It is a brand new building that, other than that one, no other that you could drive to right now would look like this.
So am I correct then in facade number 4 faces Lewis Lane? Why don't you just why don't you point each facade and tell us where it's facing?
4 is Lewis Lane.
Okay.
So this would be the front elevation along Pulaski, and then this would be the rear along the back access drive. And one thing that's important with these doors is that they are front-back access. So there are customer entrances on the front and the back of the store.
Okay.
And then this would be the facade that would be towards the Rite Aid building and then on the Lewis Lane.
Okay. So, and then what are the uses inside the building facing Lewis Lane on the floor plan?
So on the floor plan, that side is the cooler box.
The cooler box, okay. So no windows on the cooler box. The only reason I say that is because your Lewis Lane, again, that's an important presentation to the community, that facade, and it's probably your least engaging facade. And so I would have hoped there's something else you could have done with that facade to create a more welcoming appearance, and especially since you have a driveway going that way. And people will be driving by it all the time. You don't want it to look like the back of your building, which it does right now. You know, I also noticed you have a pretty wide sidewalk along that side, but there's no parking over there, so maybe that sidewalk could be sacrificed in place of plantings. You know, you could use vegetative screening, or find some other way to make that facade more welcoming. All right. And then, yeah, I agree with Janice. I think if we're going to have sign height limitations, we want to enforce those. And it's not encouraging that you would seek right away maybe to go to the Zoning Board of Appeals on this. I would certainly suggest a condition in our approval that any sign be limited to the 10-foot height limitation that exists right now.
Can I ask a clarifying question there? With the height being limited to 10 feet, I think the square footage that's permitted is 30 square feet.
Mm-hmm.
Keeping in mind that there is pricers that are required by the state of Maryland to be on that sign, would that would there be opposition on your end to us going to Board of Appeals to increase that 30 square feet?
It would have been good to see the sign here today. That would have been better to see as part of your application. So, it's still, any sign would still have to be approved by the planning department. Is that correct, Tim? Before they could even go to the zoning board of appeals? There's no action for them to appeal to.
Well, if they need a variance, they would know in advance. They wouldn't have to get a disapproval from us and then appeal our approval. They would just request a variance from the strict reading of the code. And then they would do that on their hardship, or your unique situation would be that state law requires certain signs for prices or whatever you had just mentioned. But they would file for a variance.
Okay, prior to you making seeing a proposed sign or making a determination on that?
Yeah, if we denied them, then they would be, if we denied them, they would be appealing our decision.
Right.
But our decision would be correct according to code. So they wouldn't have to wait for that. They would file for a variance to say that they couldn't meet the strict standard, the strict reading of our ordinance.
I have a question, Tim.
Sure.
All of this, is this coordinated with the surrounding other businesses who might be affected by the traffic or any competition, for lack of a better word?
We send out notices to all adjacent properties for people to be here, and we publicly, make this available on our website for people to come. So, in that sense, people can come and make comment. For the Go Car Wash across the street, we did let them know that we let both parties know that they were kind of coming in at the same time and would be affecting the same area. So I think they've shared a lot of information with each other about their improvements, but they're two separate businesses, so it still makes it a little bit sticky. But we've done what we're required to do under law, and we went a little bit above and beyond by connecting those two businesses. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, if I can, just for the record, just so I can just mention what Jen is referring to, just so everybody knows. So under Article 7 of the site plan ordinance, there are architectural standards that we look at. So one is this requiring stucco and not allowing IFAS or similar split face block or cladding. But under number 7, it says, in the commercial district, all sides of a commercial or multifamily residential building facing a street must be brick, decorative masonry, glass panel, or other appropriate finished facade as may be approved by the Planning Commission. So staff didn't necessarily have a problem with some of the I'm not sure you called it, but the wood facade. We didn't have an issue with that, but since it wasn't one of those 3 or 4 things specifically mentioned, we just brought it to their attention to bring to Planning Commission's attention to say that they have to say that that's an appropriate facade. So, with what you said, Mr. Chair, if you don't think this is something that we normally look at under the purview, then that would be accepted. If it needs a closer look, then at least everybody knows and it's on the table.
Yeah, when I made that statement, I was referring to style. I was not referring to materials.
Understand? Okay,
Yeah.
I just wanted to make sure that we were all on the same page.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
Can we touch on a couple of other things?
Sure.
Okay. Can we go back to the some of us touched on the gasoline tanks early on. So have you done a phase 1 environmental on this property?
We've done phase 1, phase 2, geotechnical, geophysical, vapor encroachment screening. We did the whole gamut.
Good to hear, professional outfit. So, and the phase 2 was invasive to determine whether there'd been any leaking from the existing gas tanks?
It was, yes.
And the results were?
That there's some existing contamination that's tied to an open DEP case. It's already under review, and the Maryland law requires that regardless if there's a case open or not, if you find anything during phase 2, you need to contact DEP, which we did.
Right.
And they agreed that our findings were simply the remnant of the existing ongoing case.
Okay, so
It
there will be.
It did require an additional opening of a case, based on what we found.
So there will be remediation required.
Not necessarily. So if we hit groundwater, which we believe we will, that will need to be either placed in a frac tank or actively remediated while it's being pumped out to install the new tanks. So to answer your question there, yes. With regard to the soils, those soils that will come off the site will need to be sent to a facility can take contaminated soils. But the contamination that was found is not at the level that would require kind of ongoing active remediation.
Okay. And then in the tank removal process, the state regulates that, and so you would address whatever soil contamination or leaking issues, you would address that at that time?
Correct. So, so Maryland law requires that upon the decommissioning of a gas station, the owner of the station is required to remove the tanks, remove all of the other fuel components, so that would be the underground fuel lines, the MPDs, all need to be removed by the owner of the facility. So that in our lease with the owner of the property, that is part of the owner's responsibility.
So it wouldn't be Wawa, it would be the current owner of the property. And you're leasing the property from the owner?
That is correct.
So it's a long-term ground lease, is that?
It is.
Okay. So when would that happen? What's the sequence of events and when the tank removal would happen?
Yeah, so the lease is structured in such a way that, if we're not successful of getting approved here, the current owner does not want to close a business that can sustain itself. So the way the lease is structured is, upon us receiving full approvals and building permits, then that owner has a certain notice time that frankly I'm not sure what it is. It's not that long though. That they will close that station. They will demolish, again, the fuel kind of focused components being the underground tanks, the MPDs, fuel lines, et cetera, and then they will require, a part of our deal again, they will have to remediate any soils that need remediating per Maryland law. As I stated, that based on how much contamination and what it is, if it's a commercial property, Maryland law says it can stay on the site. It just can't leave the site. So depending on soil balance, whether I think we're pretty balanced. Remind me, are we an export or?
We're pretty balanced.
Okay, so we're pretty balanced. So in general, for the most part, we're not going to need to import or export much soil to make the grading of the site work. But in particular, where our tanks are going to go underground, that will generate a lot of spoils. And based on what we found, and we will test that soil again when we take it out, before we take it to ground and then after we take it out of the ground. But we are assuming that all that soil will have to be taken off-site to a controlled facility that can take contaminated soil.
Okay. Thank you for that explanation. I had a couple of other, I had a question on the lighting plan. You have some pretty intense lighting on there, and a lot of your light fixtures offered a range of Kelvin possibilities. And Kelvin is actually the color of the light. And one thing we're discovering as we move into LEDs, that the color of the light is very important. And while LEDs are great for energy efficiency and all, they can produce some very harsh results at Kelvin levels over 3,000. And the National Park Service and the American Medical Association have issued studies which recommend Kelvin readings below 3,000. So I would suggest, which is basically a warmer color instead of that bright glare that really affects the eyes and causes other reported health problems. So I would recommend that any lighting fixtures within your development be under, and more broadly you might think about this too, but be below 3,000 Kelvin or below. And then, let me see, real quick. Oh, and then your detention, so you have, is it a galley kind of system underground? Do you have further explanations on that? And how would those be maintained going forward?
So I'm Mike Gazelle with Bowler, Site Civil for this project. So the stormwater is a couple of different components. One is the above-ground microbiome retention facilities along Route 40. Then there'll be 2 underground storm filter systems that are in concrete structures that have filter cartridges inside that, once they're installed, there's a yearly maintenance agreement that's in place that the company comes out, takes them out, puts new cartridges in. They take those off to a facility, they clean them and reuse those, put new material in them
Okay.
and use those. So that treats it for water quality. Once that water is cleaned, through those facilities, it goes to an underground detention facility that right now we're proposing underground storage pipes that will contain the storms, self-contained inside the pipes, and then release it at a controlled rate so we don't increase the flow rate from the site above what's being generated today from the site.
Okay. So those are all underground and they're under paved surfaces?
That's correct, yes.
So if something happens, you got to dig up the
We'd
pavement?
have to dig up part of the parking lot or wherever
Yeah.
those facilities would be located to fix them, yes.
But the microbiome detention is your first flush?
That's correct, yes. So
Okay,
that
and
treats
then
up to the first 1 inch coming off the parking lot, off the canopies, and around the fuel tanks themselves.
And how are those landscaped? Is it all sod or is there some?
Those will have a mixture of different shrubs and plants inside of those.
So it's like a rain garden?
Correct, yes. Yep.
Okay. All right, good. All right, I think those were my questions, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, thank you.
Thanks, Chip.
Anyone else have a question? And also, are you done with your presentation? I didn't want to, I hope we didn't
Did you want
interrupt
to
you.
hear more from me?
No. I just didn't want to cut you short.
We're done.
Okay. So, any questions?
I just had a quick question regarding parking. I understand you said 47 parking spots. That's great. My question is, are you going to have a lot of the reserved carry-out pickup parking that's usually not accessible to people that are coming and going and just picking up things? Is that going to be an abundance, or can you minimize the amount of those type of spots and increase handicap parking?
Sure. So right now, the handicap parking does meet requirements for ADA. In regards to the pickup spots, Chris, do you guys typically?
Yeah, so right now, and we don't have any that I'm aware of plans to have dedicated pickup spots. The way our strategy works right now is we number every spot in the whole store. Every spot has a little number on it, and if you use the app, that can enable curbside pickup. And when you pull into the site, I'm at spot 46. We are generally moving away from that, but at the moment, from what I understand, that's how we'd be planning to open this store. So so to be clear, no dedicated pickup spots. Every spot on the site will be for anyone.
So you can park in number 1 even if you didn't order from the app?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay.
Yeah, exactly. Yep.
Thank you.
And there's no drive-through here, right? Drive-through pickup?
That's correct.
Right, okay.
By the way, lovely presentation, and I appreciate all your efforts in coming forward to our city and all the research that you have done. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Okay. Is there anyone here from the public that would like to address the commission on this particular case or that have comments? Please come up and introduce yourself with your address and
Hello, my name is Louis Barnett, and I live at 520 Peace Chance, one of the houses up on the hill that you referred to earlier in your presentation. And I would just like to say thank you for all that you're doing. I hope that you give careful consideration to moving forward with this tonight. And I noticed no one talked about quality of life for the residents who currently live in the community. One thing that you talked about earlier was the amount of traffic. And we've spent a lot of time this evening talking about this. And I think part of the reason that we've spent so much time on this is that you're taking an area that's already very, very congested and trying to fit something that's going to be larger into an already congested area. Now, I'm one of the people who come through Lewis Lane sometimes to get to Route 40. Only because when you go down Chapel Road and you try to make a right, it's very, very difficult to do that. So again, you're already looking at a smaller area, making it even more congested. And you said something earlier about moving it to the other side of the Aberdeen Credit Union, possibly as another location, instead of just having it at Lewis Lane, which is already congested. So that's one point I wanted to make. The other thing, I've been using the BP gas station for 7 years now. And one of the reasons I prefer that particular gas station is that you can get in and out of there quickly. When I'm going to get gas, I'm not going to pick up a sandwich. It's nice for people who might want to do that, but my goal is to get gas, get in and out of there. And the service has been excellent, the pricing is competitive, and I question whether you need another gas station so close, because you already have the Crown, you have the Weiss, you have Royal Farms, all in a very close proximity to each other. And to me, when I look at the kinds of things that we need to have in Havre de Grace, I just question whether we need another gas station that's going to be larger in such a smaller area. Again, that's already congested. And when you're trying to make a left coming out of there after you've gotten your gas and the train is backed up, it's very, very difficult. So you're really going to make a situation more difficult. And as good as the presentation was, I didn't hear all of the questions that I think need to be answered in order to feel comfortable with moving forward with this. Again, another location I think would be wonderful for this, but again, the question I have, do we need a larger gas station in that particular location? So I thank you for your time, for your consideration. Those of us who live on the Hill face this every day. We're going to continue to have to face this. And people who don't live in the community sometimes don't appreciate how difficult it is to get in and out, because there are very few ways to get in and out. And again, I've been traveling that route for the last 7 years. I don't know how often you all travel that route. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Hi, good evening. My name is Chris Providence. I'm a resident of Havre de Grace, and Mr. Barnett just stole some of my comments. But well, I should say I'm a frequent user of the BP gas station as well, and one of the reasons is the prices are great. I use my Gas Buddy, and they consistently have the best prices, and the service is great and courteous. I would hate to see BP go. But also, I'm just curious as to how much community input there's been into whether or not the residents nearby want a Wawa in that area. I know not too far from that area we have Royal Farms gas station and convenience store right off of Ohio Street. So I'm just curious, how much input has there been? Do we have information indicating that the residents want a Wawa in that area? So that's my question.
Tim?
Hi. So we have a struggle when you talk about community input, I'm not trying to beat around the bush on you. I'll tell you that the community input is happening now. As planners, we're taught that community input is very important, and not just to placate people, but to really reach out. But I discussed this before. We also have legal standards, and we have really specific requirements that say that we notify the property, people around the property, we hold a public hearing, and we advertise that hearing online, out front, that sort of thing. So we've met all of our legal requirements. But those are our minimum standards. Unfortunately, legally, it's hard for the city to go above those minimum legal standards, because once you do it one time, you have to do it every time, and you have to do it consistently. So unfortunately, the way that the law is set up, we're consistently at that minimum requirement for public participation. So we could admittedly do a better job, but legally we've met our requirements. We have this public hearing hoping that residents like you and the gentleman back there come out and state what you'd like to state about the situation. We advertise it online. We're recording this now, so this will be out for the public to listen to. They can also get a hold of us and provide any comment, but that's sort of the framework that we're stuck in. I hope that answers your question without beating around the bush on you a little bit.
Yes, I guess for me, that suggests that there's even more reason to take one of the suggestions that you offered earlier, 60 days to render a decision, to allow more community input. Sometimes, I'm sure you well know, sometimes the information does not get to the people that you want it to get to. And considering the fact that traffic congestion is one of the major concerns, I think it would be helpful and beneficial to make even more of an effort to solicit that community input so that the people who are going to be most impacted by having a Wawa in that location would have a great opportunity to have their say and give some input. So
I think that's a fair comment. I believe that's something the Planning Commission could request us to do if this was tabled. Just putting out there, I'm not advocating one way or another, but I'm just saying if you want to address the gentleman's comment, that is a possibility that one of the things you could recommend, and then we could do some further outreach based on your decision.
okay. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Is anyone else in the audience that would like to address this case? Okay. So at this point, the Planning Commission has to make a decision, and we can decide to approve the site plan as presented without any further requirements or amendments or anything to it. We can decide to approve it with certain conditions that be laid on it, or we can decide to table this for a reasonable period of time, which I would think would be certainly no longer than a month, to give further consideration to any part of this site plan that we've discussed tonight, if we have concerns with it. And so we're going to have to start out with a motion.
Mr. Chairman, I just, in response to the two members of the public, I was kind of surprised we didn't see anybody from Grace Manor here tonight either, because that's a neighborhood. Are you from Grace Manor?
No, the only thing that I was going to say, we found out about this meeting by accident. I don't know what attempts were made, because had we not gone to the
Okay.
public, the other members of the public probably didn't get.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah.
You're a little bit out of order, but thank you. Thank you.
Sorry.
So the immediate subdivision is what's called a Havre Hills, which translates into a harbor of hills, which makes it's kind of funny name, but
Yeah.
but that's the one that's just right across the tracks that you have to wind your way through.
Right, and I think you can correct me if I'm wrong, Tim, but I think the technical requirements are notifying people across the street or immediately adjoining. And that doesn't cover a lot of people.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's adjacent.
Adjacent, yeah.
Excuse me. Tim, do we have any, I know the county has a requirement of signage on the site, a certain size, and then red ink, blah, blah, blah. I remember back from previous life and county position, we don't have.
Our sign code for the commercial district, which is Route 40, is pretty liberal, but it does for pole signs, monument signs, and pylon signs. It has a maximum height of 10 feet and a square footage of 32 square feet. But we allow electronic signs and all that other stuff, so we're not regulating to that extent in the commercial district, just square footage, area, and height.
Excuse me, are you talking about notifying the public?
The notification of intent to develop, or,
You mean when we post the property?
yes,
Yeah, there's 2 property postings that went out on the site at least 14 days before that had all the information on it. And the person who usually writes on those signs wasn't here. And Eric and I have really terrible penmanship, so he actually printed it out and pasted on the sign in like as clear writing as you possibly could have. So those were posted properly in the time matter. So yeah, I think Mr. Millard mentioned there's like 4,000 trips here a day, so there's a real potential that anybody paying attention would have saw those signs.
Okay,
I would do worse than you and Eric.
so are we in a position to offer a motion?
I'll offer a motion, Mr. Chairman, and we've also thrown a lot of information, suggestions at the applicants that maybe rather than trying to impose conditions on them immediately, we might give them an opportunity to respond further, which maybe a delay of 30 days would allow. And so I would recommend that we table this to our January meeting, and just not as conditions, but as suggestions to the applicant, some of the things we've raised to you, consider burying the electric lines. It would be good to hear any further input that the county or the city engineer might have in terms of maintaining the driveway into the property across from Weiss. Any details you could provide on the sidewalk, refuge, maybe relocating the street trees, the lighting below Kelvin, and maybe you could provide, if you don't think the current sign standards meet your requirements, maybe you could provide a sample street sign for us. And then, my personal thing was, what could you do with that facade, including maybe any screening, plantings along the way. And, one thing I failed to mention too, it's real technical, but you have some of the water lines coming into your property travel along the city right-of-way. And just again, in the general interest of keeping that right-of-way as clean as possible, buried electric lines, keeping the street trees out of the way, it'd be good to put those water lines onto your property so they don't travel down the city right-of-way. And so just...
Can you condense that motion?
I move that we table this matter till our January meeting.
Okay, so not to exceed 30 days, is that a fair thing to say? Is that fair enough?
Yeah, so the law says it could be tabled up to that decision has to be made within 60 days of when they first see the planning commission, and it can be tabled up until that time. So we can just plan on having this at the first planning commission meeting in January, which is now on the 3rd Thursday of the month.
Okay. Do I hear a second?
Second.
All right, let's see. Any discussion on the motion? Hearing none. Yes.
Would we have a public hearing in between that time as to elicit public input?
So you're,
I
don't know, that would have to be a separate motion if we requested that.
I mean, if you guys just gave me a laundry list of like Chip just did, he gave me a list. I know you'd mentioned about looking at 4 lanes, Mr. Ford. Then we have the community meeting. If there was just any other things you wanted them to look at during this tabled period, we could just have that kind of informally now, and then that motion could stand.
I think the word needs to get out to anybody in the community that wants to come to that meeting, and
so just
be the same as a public hearing.
Just so I'm getting council members' Shanegas's suggestion, then you would like for us to hold a public workshop here and invite the public. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And then, so in some jurisdictions, they have you reach out to a larger area of 500 or 500 feet radius from the property, 1,000 feet. Is there, you don't have to give me an exact number, but is there an area you're trying to reach, just so we have some direction, so we're not kind of arbitrarily, or sending things out to the entire population?
Well, I think it directly affects the community, Havre Hills, Grace Manor, the residents across from the high school on Lewis Lane, and the community at large that shops in Harbor, the Harbor, I forget what it's called, Harbor Shops, and Wise. I think that, in general, the community within that vicinity, all the way over to behind McDonald's area, because that's just like our little community.
Let's do this, let's offer a second motion after we voted on that. Does that sound good?
Sure.
Okay. That'll keep things a little cleaner here. Any other comments on this motion? Hearing none, we have a motion and a second, and I'm going to call for a vote. And you're voting to table. So, Councilwoman Snagus.
Yes.
Mrs. Chan.
Yes.
Mr. Place.
Yes.
Ms. Shaw.
Yes. Yes.
Yes. Mr. Hartenstein.
Yes.
Mr. Garono.
Yes.
And chair votes yes. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to table. And so now I understand we have a second motion that you're offering.
I make a motion to have a public work session to bring forth the matter of having Wawa presented on Lewis Lane and Route 40.
And this would be prior to our regular meeting.
Prior to our January meeting.
All right, here's a second. Gone. Hearing no second, I think we're going to have to pass on that.
Can I just say, I do appreciate that comment. I think from my experience, us actually tabling a matter to the next meeting is quite a stretch as is, but very appropriate. And in fairness to the applicant, this has been a two-step process for them. They did have to go for a conditional use permit to allow a gas station in the first place, which they have done, I believe.
That was done by the current owner at BP, so it continues with the land.
Oh, that was done like in '84, so
It was done some time back.
Yeah, all right, never mind that. But yeah, I do think, getting the word out. And you all might, I don't know if you have any marketing data. I'm sure you're doing this for a reason, and you think it's going to be financially viable, and there's a need for an additional gas station and convenience store in this area. So you might consider whatever information you might want to share on that as well.
Okay.
Public can attend our meeting in January, correct?
I'm sorry?
The public can attend our meeting in January.
Yeah, we can fill the place up.
And with a broader outreach.
I think legally I need a motion from you guys to do broader outreach. And I know it sounds silly, but our code is very specific that we
need a motion to do what?
To have broader outreach. Under our law, it simply states that we can inform adjacent properties. If we go above and beyond this on our own accord, we have to do it for every project in the future, or it creates a problem. So we either need to, at some point down the road, maybe think about changing our notice requirements. But the way that they are now, it's not that like with other things where you just have to meet the minimum requirements. Like we only are told to meet the minimum requirements from the city attorney to meet our legal standards. So if there's the need to go above and beyond on noticing, I would need some sort of motion on that.
I would say based on tonight's meeting, the public's able to view this on, a recording, and announcements of our typical monthly meeting. I think that should be enough to get those who missed this meeting, if they're really interested.
And I also question what exactly would be gained if this applicant is meeting all the technical requirements of the city of Havre Grace and they come before us. Our duty is to make sure that those requirements have been met and to express concerns over anything such as the things that we've expressed concern over. One of the big ones being traffic. That we've done our duty, we've done our due diligence as a planning commission. This is different than a board of appeals. And I think that if we go too far with something like this, we will just absolutely bring everything to a standstill, because we do have a process that we go through for these kinds of developments, and that's what we've done. And we're not done with it yet. We still got the next meeting.
Yes.
So which would send a signal that we're not exactly happy with everything that's been presented to us. Yes.
I would say that I agree with the due diligence on behalf of the Planning Commission, as well as the corporation that is trying to come to Havre Grace. And I know that it would be welcomed. I know that Havre Grace is progressive. We want our Route 40 to look inviting. And I know that, we just have our concerns, the signage, the traffic, and just being able to bring, prosperity to our Route 40 and to our community, but to, also accommodate the concerns of our citizens that live here. We have a lot of people that travel through, and they never stop. But if we could find a way to welcome them into our downtown to visit, or, make it so that, they, care about our community when they come through, and not, make it a rest stop, but just take some time. So overall, I think that the waiting period that everyone is requesting at this point is that just to make sure that the things that we all agree on can come to pass and bring forward a company that would represent our city and would benefit everyone involved. Thank you.
Perhaps, it might be helpful if Chip and I, since we both had some very specific things, if the two of us met with you, Tim, well before the next meeting, so that we can provide these folks with something a little more specific about what we're concerned about. Because I suspect from hearing us tonight that they're not exactly sure what we're asking them to do.
Right. No, I appreciate that. Yeah, if we can do it as soon as, we can do it this week.
Does that sound good to you?
Yeah, I'm happy to do that. In fact, I'd already written something up.
And I can, if one other person wants to join us, you can, but
Yeah.
we can't go beyond 3.
And everybody else can they can email the entire group, just don't reply to everybody. So if you have any comments, if anybody wants to send me an email by Friday with some items they want us to examine, we'll go from there.
Okay.
And Councilman, may I just add one thing real quick? There's nothing to prevent council members at council meetings to make people aware of this continuing application, or yourself, Tim, during the report.
That's correct.
Which would probably be helpful. And I do think we need to look at our notice provisions differently, because this just adjoining, neighboring property owners is not cutting it. It's not getting the word out, and we're not getting the public participation that we really deserve. And of course, there's nothing to prevent an applicant from reaching out to the community on their own, too. So I'll just
Did you got a comment?
Can the sign be updated to the new hearing date?
We'll post all new signs and send new letters to all the adjacent properties for the next hearing date.
Okay.
Mhm.
Anything else? All right. We're going to move to the next one. We're going to hear an annexation petition. Let me see which one's first here.
I have 1419 Chapel Road listed first in the presentation, if that's all right.
Okay, 1419 Chapel Road. Would, are they here?
No.
Oh, I thought all those folks sitting back there.
No, I don't think so. Nope.
Okay.
So,
That's chickens. Okay.
yeah, so just briefly,
We don't have to, I don't think we have to get deep into it, but you just. if you
not
wanna
at all.
give
Nope. We'll be
introductory.
pretty quick on this. So, just briefly, we've also had one full annexation in the 19 months that I've been here, and the administration department has really run with all annexations. The planning department makes sure that it is within our growth area for the comprehensive plan. We send out some required letters to different agencies. That's sort of been our involvement. I asked Diane and Eric to start looking more into annexations, and obviously Diane is really thorough, as you guys know, and I didn't even realize that Chapter 20 existed in our code. So just a few years ago, we passed an annexation policy, and administration has been using that annexation policy to make sure that the annexation is appropriate for the city. But there were several provisions in there that, because they were smaller annexations, the city was just kind of looking past, but we felt that we probably need to make changes to Chapter 20. But in the meantime, we need to follow what the requirements of Chapter 20 says. So what we're doing now meets the state requirements, and that's what's really most important. We have an internal system for processing that we're properly utilizing, but under 20-2D, petitions are reviewed by the Planning Commission. All we do is review the petition and take public comment, submit your recommendation to the City Council if you have one. So this is 1419 Chapel Road.
Can I ask one question first?
Yep, go ahead.
Because it'll pertain to this then. What changes do you anticipate trying to make to Chapter 20? Like not bringing it to us no more or something?
What we discussed was that there's a whole section of items. So there's this, coming to the Planning Commission, there's a community meeting that's required, or that's listed in the code. And there's a few different things. They want to move that to annexations of 10 acres or larger, or to the discretion of the administration. So if it's something that is on 8 acres of land, but is like a pretty intense use, or something that, that the mayor and council may want more guidance on, or that staff would like to hear from all of you on. So it's really, it's keeping it, but not for a half-acre parcel here or there. So I think you'll see why when we go through these two annexations. So first one's for 1419 Chapel Road. So it's in that bottom right below those two highlighted kind of bluish green areas. Here, thank you, Diane. So that bluish green area is it's currently in the city now. That's annexed in. So 1419 Chapel Road, they currently have water and sewer services. They had contacted the city asking if they could be annexed in because their tax bill will actually decrease coming into the city because of the way that we have our water and sewer fees for people who aren't in the city and the existing trash fees at the county level. So when they asked to come in, we sent notices out to all the people on Chapel Road here that are in the county, and we had a public work session with Steve Gamatoria, April Eshok, the city attorney, myself, and the residents came in, and we tried convincing them on what a great idea that it would be if they also decided to come into the city, and no one liked our sales pitch.
Except
So, well, they asked us to come in, so then we asked all their neighbors, so they still want to come in. So that's their situation. It's somebody that's already getting city services except for trash, and it'll bring in more revenue for the city if they come in, more tax revenue for the city if they come in, and will decrease their overall cost from being in the county. So then, it's a single-family residence, currently connected to water and sewer, and they're seeking city trash services instead of county. So now would be what we would ask for public comment on this.
So I have one comment.
Mm-hmm.
Did you propose to the people that were living around them that there's a possibility that they will be annexed whether they like it or not eventually?
No, because that's not really how it works. I mean, so part of it is a political decision that you would require, that you would try to bring somebody in that didn't want to come in. The state rule says that 25% of voters in any area that you want to bring in would have to come in. So you'd really have to strong arm it. I mean, out of 4 properties, if one person lived at each, you would need 1 yes vote and 3 no votes to bring all of them in. Then when you brought them in, you'd force them all to come into water and sewer. You'd have to pay the $18,500 impact fees. They'd have to pay for all the plumbing from the street to their house to connect to city water and sewer. And now you have 3 angry voters and all their friends. So, I mean, while it's possible, I don't know that it's feasible, let's say.
This property is contiguous to what we call the enclave that's up there. It starts with Havre Grace Heights, where my property is. My house is actually outside the city limits. I'm surrounded by the city, totally. But I could go on my back deck and fire a gun level, and no matter which way I fired it, the bullet's going over top of Havre Grace. You know, so just to use that as a sort of a example. But I've long wanted to be annexed, and I've expressed that to several administrations, and I've long wanted to lead the charge for annexation, because most of us, unlike this house, are on septic systems, and most of us were built back in the 50s and 60s, and our septic systems are not so hot. And it's true that once you become part of the city and are on public water and sewer, I am on public water, by the way, but your property value goes up, you know, and it's easier to sell your home, and you can get a higher price for it, and all those things. And you don't have to put in today's BAT septic systems, which can cost you $30,000 on the day it fails, that you're not prepared to spend, and stuff like that. So there's a lot of advantages to people actually coming into the city today that didn't exist 30 years ago. It didn't make financial sense then. It makes a lot more financial sense today. And this person is just one person that's taking advantage of it. But I can walk from my house to this person's yard and not step on city property. We're contiguous, even though it looks like a you know, one of these gerrymandered political maps when you look down through there. So I'm all for bringing this person in.
Me too.
Just personally. Is well, any more discussion first?
Yeah, Tim, are the majority of the homeowners in, you know, despite what Volney just said, are most of them in the city, or would this party be unique?
Yeah, most of them aren't in this. So to the, I don't know if it's directionally north, but above this property is an enclave that's in the city. But everything along Chapel to the east and west on this side of the street is not in the city. And then on the southern side, I think you have Bayview Estates and some of those other
places. That townhouse in that person's backyard along their real property line is city.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
There are about 12 properties along there that are not annexed.
Right. It's like a little mosaic on Chapel Road. It jumps back and forth from one side to the other.
And did you say you reached out to others along Chapel Road?
We reached out to every landowner on Chapel Road. We held a meeting here.
And this was the only taker?
Well, they were the ones that actually, led us to that. There were no other takers. No one else was interested. There was the possibility because we can't just remove impact fees, but there could be potential tax abatement. So there was the discussion of, you know, if cost is a problem, we could potentially abate taxes to, you know, over time have you do that. But that's something the mayor and council will need to do. And they didn't even bite on like that idea. Like, can you do this for us?
And the others are on well and septic?
Everybody's
All
on,
jumbled?
there's one other property on water, I want to say, somewhere along here, but everybody else is on private well and septic.
Almost all of Havre de Grace Heights is on water, city water, including me.
I love that little community. It's beautiful.
Yeah. The reason people aren't jumping to the idea of being annexed is because they haven't been presented a detailed plan of options. In other words, it hasn't yet been laid out in front of them how they can benefit by doing it. And there needs to be a number of different optional benefits to fit their individual situations, because everyone's got a different situation. And that's discussion for another time.
Mr.
Any
Ford,
other discussion about this annexation?
I just wanted to ask, again, what you just said. Are people given incentives, you know, if they are being annexed? I mean, are they like, I don't know how to say it, like dangle a carrot in front of them?
Yeah, I mean, there's a possibility for incentives. I mean, when we held this public meeting, it was to see were people interested, and if not, what were your obstacles? And obviously, money came up as the obstacle because of the amount of money it would cost for them to connect to water and sewer. So when we try to say that there would be the potential for some sort of tax abatement or whatever, that basically the city couldn't pay for their private connection, but that maybe they could offset other costs to make it work for them in the long run. No one was interested. So there weren't any specific problems like, I don't like the police here and I don't want them in my house. You know, there was nothing about any other city service. It was, the only issues that came up was the cost of connecting water and sewer. And some people are just not interested in being part of being under the city. They're just not interested. There was somebody, there's a big flag lot that goes back, and they had called and said, "What is this about? What's going on? Are you trying to annex us? What's going on?" And we're like, "Nope, we're just seeing what's out there. I don't want to be in the city. I don't want to be part of the city government."
Yeah.
So just, yeah.
The two main obstacles are their fear of a significant tax increase because they're going from county tax to city tax, and the other is the cost of hooking up to a sewer system. Almost everybody up there is already hooked up to the water system. There are very few that aren't. It's the sewer system connections. And the kind of incentives that I was mentioning earlier, again, I don't want to take too much time tonight on that because it's another discussion, but it would be financing incentives, because in order to put in all that sewer system, all that infrastructure, the city would have to do a bond to pay for it. And the bond would have to be financed over a period of, say, 20 years. And so you would arrange all these different ways that people could finance in over that 20-year period, so they don't have to pay a hunk of money all at once. Anyway, let's move on this.
I'll move we recommend annexation of this property.
I hear a second.
Second.
All right. Any discussion on it? Motion. Let me just make a note here. Hearing none, I will call for a vote. We'll start with
Aye.
Toronto.
Oh, I
Aye.
didn't say Hartenstein.
Arnstein. Is aye?
Aye, yes.
Shaw.
Yes.
Place.
Yes.
Chan.
Yes.
Schnegus.
Yes.
And Ford votes yes. And we got time for one more. And this is the, so we recommend the annexation
Thank you.
unanimously. This is Ron Adams, Laurel Bush Road LLC, petition for 1609 Pulaski Highway.
That's right. This is the the vacant Cecil Bank property. if everybody knows where that's at. When you come up Revolution Street to 40, it's kind of right there in front of you, in front of the storage facility. You can actually see on
You said Revolution Street.
when you come up Revolution to 40,
Oh, you
this
Post
is
Road.
directly in front of you.
You go out all the way out Post Road.
Yep. And then you can see the storage facility. It's not the storage facility, but you can see the area behind here is the storage tanks. It's a Cecil Bank property in front here.
And this was a savings and loan or a bank or something?
Cecil Bank.
Cecil Bank. And what is it going to continue as?
We haven't received an official proposal for site plan approval, but we have received we've received a traffic study for a Sheetz convenience store and gas station.
Lovely. Well, that's fine. If they all think they can sell gas, that's good. Now,
You can't make these things up. You really can't.
so why do they want to be annexed?
To be connected to city services.
Okay.
Yeah, and it's
that's
also
their goal.
beneficial to the city because as we're connecting to Aberdeen, we have better access to our water and sewer, or our water system as we have that pipeline down 40. So
Essentially, commercial water and sewer connections.
Yep, that would be correct. So obviously, yeah, any site plan that would come in for this would come to all of you for review. So this doesn't, this doesn't supersede any of that. Former Cecil Bank, proposed annexation to Seek City Services, potential location for a gas station with convenience store. We haven't received any official development application yet, maybe because they're not annexed into the city, but they have performed a traffic impact analysis for Sheetz. We'll leave it open for questions or public comment.
It's not the buildings behind, right?
It's not the buildings behind, just that Cecil Bank property.
Just
What did
to
you say those-
sensitize the commission, the first meeting that the mayor and the city attorney had with the population in Bully Rock, the first question they received was, how do we de-annex? So it was pretty funny. I mean, and Paul Ishak's answer was, there is no such thing as de-annex. But at any rate, it was...
the South tried that about 150 years ago.
well, it's pretty funny.
How
To
large
shock
is the
to
site?
to the attending
sorry?
public.
How large is the site?
Let me go back and look. Do you happen to remember offhand?
1.49 acres maybe, and then there's a little tiny 30-foot right-of-way up against it, and I think it's 1.59 total.
Okay, so
That's hardly big enough for a gas station, really.
1.49 acres, 1.59 total, something like that.
Close like that.
Just off
It
of
was all in the paperwork that was sent to you on this. Lasky.
Okay. I feel like that anytime we have a chance to bring property into the city that's already surrounded mostly by a city, that we should take it. Whether or not that particular project moves forward or not. That we should always, in other words, the closer we can come to
unified.
an infilled city, the better off we are.
Well, and to speak but economic development looked at these properties along Revolution, and we actually worked with the city to plant, to make them more attractive, because they, as parts of the city, whether or not you think of them as being inside Havre de Grace or not, by inference, they are inside, and people driving in, they are gateway properties, and people see them as Havre de Grace, and you want them to be as much a positive reflection on the city as possible. So I don't know what the city spent, but it was a significant number of dollars spent on planning. Everything down to McAndrew's body shop has, if you notice them as you drive along, there's new plantings along, new trees, bushes planted along there.
Any discussion?
Yeah, a couple of quick questions. So is the city surround this property now, or is this?
everything in light blue is shows our zoning around the area. So actually, the only areas not in light blue would so the areas just sort of, there's one property south, and then you can see like the storage area around it, and then there's that kind of unimproved area behind those storage areas. But besides that, everything else all the way around it is in city limits.
Yeah, I drove by there in the rain yesterday. So did you say there was tanks on that storage area, or did I mishear you?
No, I think it's just like a public self-storage.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So there's no potential noxious
Metal sheds,
uses,
you know.
yeah, right adjoining. Okay. Sounds good to me. At least they keep the property up pretty well, too. I got to give them credit for that.
Yeah, that's correct. They do.
We ready for motion?
Move that we approve.
No, we got to have a motion to approve if you want to do that. Who would like to move to approve,
I move to approve.
or to recommend the annexation?
I move to recommend the annexation
Okay.
of 1609 Pulaski Highway.
Do I hear a second?
Second?
Where'd it come from? Chip?
Ed.
No, you. Discussion on the motion? Hearing none, I'll call for a vote. Let's just start with Mrs. Shaw.
Yes.
Mr. Hartenstein?
Yes.
Mrs. Chan?
Yes.
Mr. Place?
Yes.
Mr. Grono?
Yes.
Mrs. Snagus?
Yes.
And chair votes yes. Okay, we decided that one. Now, we are right on top of 9 o'clock. And we've got 2 more potential pieces of business, but it's late. I think we're starting to get into a territory where we're probably going to have to start figuring out a way to meet twice a month, which I've always been afraid of, that we were going to get into that. But
I'm available on Christmas if you guys are. I said I'm available on Christmas if you guys are. That would be about 2 weeks
I don't
from.
mean meet again.
I know. No, that would be about 2 weeks from now. I was just joking.
Yes.
Do you mind if I just give you a really quick summary of the transportation an extension, or which was next on the agenda? Right.
I mean, you
Well,
can.
the next thing
It makes
was-
sense for you to go next before housing, I think.
If you don't mind, and I'll make it a very whirlwind tour. It's very photo heavy anyway.
Okay.
Is that okay? And then you can actually go through the materials because it will be online
right.
for you. If that's,
This one here?
if that, just because I'd like to put it to bed and I'd like to put it on the in progress city website so it's there for the public. Everybody got a chance to read the full chapter? Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah. It's just a new section. I'm not gonna, I won't belabor it. There we go.
Does that work?
I'm not gonna even go into any of my spiel. Is that okay with you, Volney?
Yeah, you think you can do it in like 5 or 10?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, no, I'm not giving a full spiel. I will just flip through the pictures. You guys, I try to set these up, I'm sorry. I try to set these up so that anybody from the public, without the benefit of the conversation, can actually follow along. So you have the chapter is outlined. If you have comments, I would love any comments about the transportation chapter. I just really want to launch it so that it's there for the public and the draft chapter is out there. And I'm not going to belabor functional classifications and what's in the chapter. I focus on these roadways. There are 7 main roadways that we talk about, and each one is outlined. I spent a lot of time today putting together this presentation, but you can look at the pictures yourself because I don't have that much to say anyway. But there are some pieces that I want you to know, like with the interchange at I-95. There was actually a study done for the hospital site. That's worth maybe knowing about as far as conceptually there were recommendations that were made. those are things to potentially revisit. So I had images there in this summary you might want to go back and look at. Superior Street, Maryland 155, I'm not going to go into that either. We'll flip through these pictures that I did just to talk about all the different lengths of it. This is the intersection at Route 40 that's problematic, for instance, and the ideas that are woven through this chapter about bicycle and pedestrian planning on Route 40. It potentially can be a really great synthesizer for Route 40 throughout the entire length of Havre de Grace, all the way to potentially Greenway Farm and Bully Rock. Right now, you'll see on those highway sections, US 40 really looks different in the ways to kind of make this in character, incomplete streets kind of theory. So again, I'm not going to go through it. This was aerial photos of what 40 looked like inside city limits, inside city limits versus outside city limits. And then Chapel Road. Some information about Chapel Road that I want you to know about, that there was a traffic study that was performed for the city, on behalf of the city, in 2019 that projects out to 2029. And so that study, I mentioned about that, and I took lots of pictures of the disparate relationships or the disparate sections of road where we have closed section road, open section road. Sometimes we have sidewalks, sometimes we don't. And I just did lots of pictures about the length of the road because, you know, everybody lives it every day, and trying to make this a cohesive thought. But knowing that there is a traffic impact analysis on those 7 intersections, we can look at that in the future. But that's sort of the basis for the comprehensive plan to launch from here these ideas into making solutions in the future. So, and you know, that study has volumes and then future volumes based on 2029 and recommendations. And then Lewis Lane, Grace Manor, everybody knows it's very challenging through there. I don't know how we fix that, but the conversation was amazing tonight with thinking about that length of Lewis Lane between Route 40 and the railroad. And I'm not sure a wider pavement, this is my 2 cents, a wider pavement is more, it would be beneficial there. If you look at like Beards Hill in Aberdeen and how many lanes you have to try to navigate across to make left turning movements, you have a 5-lane highway if you're getting out of Home Depot, for instance, and imagine that at Lewis Lane. I'm not sure widening the road is the solution. I don't know what the solutions are. This is a crazy impact, and it was really wild to sit here and watch the discussion. It was a really beneficial discussion from my vantage point. But how do we do something better or something that doesn't make it worse there? And specifically, just want you to be aware, that is our only connection from a bikeway and pedestrian connection across Route 40 safely currently. And it is the East Coast Greenway alignment, and it's also the way the kids cross and bike across there. So we need to think about Lewis Lane and not just extend it into this bigger, wider road that nobody can navigate. So that's just my 2 cents because it was really timely. And then our downtown roadway network, we go into that, and I talk about the history and pretty pictures and stuff. And I want you to know that there's a really great website that Eric found for traffic counts, and this is the map that shows it, but it actually shows traffic counts on 10 years worth of history at these point locations. It's hard to see on this map, but there are actually point locations where it gives you the traffic volumes, the AADT and AAWDT. So just so you know, if you guys want to play at traffic in Havre de Grace, that resource is available, and we can come back together. The comprehensive plan doesn't go into this to this level, but we certainly want to have these resources to understand how we go from here to make solutions and think about our town holistically. So transportation priorities, what's important to you and the general public, and then it goes into other topics that are in the chapter, and then I'm done. So anyway, thank you. I hope we launched transportation. Well, I didn't want to.
Did you wear your sneakers tonight?
Oh, seriously. I hope you guys have a great holiday. Merry Christmas.
You guys don't want to talk about housing? Just teasing.
Can I make a comment? Just
Absolutely. As long as it's not too long on Chapel Road.
I'll try. No, listen. There's a lot more problems in Chapel. All I want to say was, you know, I took the time to read this last week, and like before I left and then come back again, because, you know, we had worked on a couple chapters back then. This is excellent work, okay?
Thank you.
I really like a lot of it. One of the questions I would have for the group, though, you know, they need input and assistance, of course, and I think the group here has a lot to offer and a lot of opinions, and maybe they're not always the same, but, you know, in this, in our master plan, I think we should be offering some of the solutions that we're trying to move forward to. I mean, this does such a super job of laying out, you know, issues, but I think we need to find, you know, or at least have a direction that the city would like to move in to rectify some of this stuff that's here. And, you know, for me, you know, the whole deal with state highways and 155 and 95, that's a big deal up there, okay? And we know that. And going back to like my first time here, we approved a site plan for the hospital, and I honestly believe that was one of the biggest linchpins with what state highways was requiring them to do, is one of the reasons why that started to fall apart. And then a whole bunch of other things, economy and stuff, of course. And then, you know, I always have to talk about Chapel Road just for 1 second. Yeah, there ain't no fix. I mean, maybe the fix is enforcement, you know? I mean, maybe that's the only thing I can think of, because, you know, maybe the traffic wouldn't be so bad if they weren't going so fast. Thank you.
Question, it's not even related to this, but maybe somebody has an answer. If those sections of road on Chapel Road are not incorporated into the city, who is responsible for the
City.
city can still
They,
police?
they have, the police, if you call the police at my house, the city comes to my house. They have these agreements with the county, because it's a question of who can get there the quickest. Yeah, that's what it really boils down to.
And ideally, it would be great to look at Chapel Road as a corridor and figure out how to have a unifying connector, instead of it being all of these disparate breaks, and ideally think about pedestrian and bikeway access and things along that way. But it's really wild to put it together in slides and realize how much it changes from block to block, and how it really needs a unifying thing. Even paint on a, you know, making a unified travel lane that's 10 foot wide that slows people down, that paint is cheap. That would go a long way to just try to neck it down and do natural traffic calming along Chapel Road. So that's another exercise for another day, but we definitely need to spend some time on Chapel Road.
Thank you. Anything else? Anybody else?
Tunnels are good, traffic calming.
I have a question. I mentioned this to, I don't know who to take it to, but I witnessed a 6-car accident at the base of Bully Rock and Route 40 the other day. And one of the problems is you come down the end of Bully Rock or Blenheim Farm, and you're looking at 2 lanes, and one of them on the left says go straight ahead or turn left. The other one says go straight across. Now, if someone from the golf course who doesn't live in Havre Grace is unaware of what to do, they damn well may turn left into oncoming traffic. And it's so stupid that road painting directs them into a road hazard.
Well, and you're talking at a crossover, correct?
It's at the base of Blenheim Farm.
Right, where there's a crossover.
Right.
So, okay.
As you come to Route 40, the one lane says turn right, the other one says either go straight or turn left. If you turn left, you're in real trouble.
It's at the Bully Rock Parkway light on
A light would be.
on 150. It's at the traffic light on 155 is where you're talking about, right?
No, this is on Route 40.
When you come to the bottom of Blenheim Farm Road, which is Bully.
The golf course.
Okay.
Yeah.
And you hit Route 40.
M&T Bank Building.
Oh, down there.
At the crossover, yeah.
I'm sorry.
That's all right.
Totally
It's late.
All right.
Yep,
Somebody in the city needs to take it up
We-
with the state and
We-
say, you've got to paint over that thing and make it right.
We need to end tonight.
All right.
Do I hear a motion that we adjourn?
So moved.
Second. We're done.
Hey, Ed, you say you go by my house? You, yeah. I don't know where you live. I live in up Chapel Road past Harry's house.
Bully Rock.
What's that?
Bully Rock, right?
Bully Rock, right. Ed wants a sign that's, he wants a sign that's coming out of Bully Rock that says no right turns.
I'll send you what I've already.
Oh, okay. Well, maybe I'll have to bother Foley to take me home again.